All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for November 17th, 2022. And at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. The commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall and on Zoom. We also have staff from the city attorney and clerk's offices, as well as the city planning department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting, however, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. If you simply want to watch the meeting, we encourage you to watch this streaming on the city's YouTube channel. You can access that at meridiancity.org/live. We're getting a feedback. Okay. All right. And away we go again. With that, let's begin with the roll call. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Stoddard,
Here.
Commissioner Grace,
Here. Commissioner
Lorcher,
Here.
Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Absent are Commissioner Wheeler and Yearsley.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. There are no modifications, so could I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, no opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a consent agenda, and we have one item on the consent agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the November 3rd, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to
Second.
moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, motion carries. This time, I'd like to explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant is finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website in advance to testify. You will then be unmuted in Zoom, or you can come to the microphones in chambers. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or a presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen, and you or the clerk will run the presentation. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on this topic, you may come forward in chambers, or if on Zoom, press the raise hand button in the Zoom app. Or if you are listening on a phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you are listening on multiple devices, such as a computer and a phone, please sure to mute the extra devices so we do not experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you're finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, we will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, we will not call on you a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for item number H 2022-0046 for Sessions Parkway. We will begin with staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. First application before you tonight is Sessions Parkway. It's a request for a development agreement modification. This application does not require commission action. City Council is a decision-making body. And preliminary plat. Preliminary plat is what's before you tonight. This site consists of 5.32 acres of land. It's zoned CG and is located at 2700 North Eagle Road. This property was annexed back in 2003 with a development agreement, which was later amended in 2017. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed use regional. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plat consisting of 5 commercial building lots on 5.32 acres of land in the CG zoning district with a request for city council approval of a right-in, right-out driveway access via North Eagle Road and State Highway 55. Approval of the preliminary plat is contingent upon city council's approval of the concurrent development agreement modification application. One driveway access is proposed at the northern boundary, which will serve as a backage road along Eagle Road and will connect to the property to the south. The jog in the roadway will result in traffic calming and reduced speeds, which is desired, especially if the access via Eagle Road is approved, which will intersect the backage road. 2 driveways to the east are proposed for interconnectivity with the future residential development. ITD has issued a letter of acceptance of the revised traffic striping conceptual drawings. Final approval of the proposed access and associated improvements will be determined once all documentation has been provided and the permit is signed. A 35-foot wide street buffer is proposed along North Eagle Road, State Highway 55, with a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway in accord with the pathway's master plan. Decorative pedestrian lighting is also required along the pathway. A 25-foot wide buffer is required on the subject property along the eastern boundary adjacent to future residential uses with lot development. Written testimony has been received from the applicant's representative, Givens Bursley. They are requesting removal of all 4 changes to the concept plan recommended by staff in section 8 of the staff report A1A. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed preliminary plat contingent upon compliance with the development agreement provisions and conditions of approval in the staff report. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Sonia. The applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I have a presentation I think Sonia is going to bring up.
We'll need your name and address for the record. And the
course.
floor is all yours.
Stephanie Hopkins with KM Engineering, 5725 North Discovery Way in Boise. I'm here super excited to represent our client and the developer for Sessions Parkway. We've been working on this project for a few years now, in various components, and we're really excited to be showing you the preliminary plat as well as discussing the development agreement modification we'll be requesting from City Council and an access, right in, right out access to State Highway 55 or Eagle Road. So just to get you situated, and actually a little bit of history on this project. It was originally annexed into the city in 2003 as part of Red Feather Estates, which is located to the southeast, as you can see on the map here. In 2015, additional property was annexed and zoned, and a conditional use permit was also approved for multifamily use. That is the DA that's current on the property now and what we are requesting to modify with City Council. We also did a property boundary adjustment for this property in 2020 that created the current configuration that you see here. So Sessions Parkway is about 5.3 acres and it's outlined in yellow. We're surrounded by existing development, most of which to the east is residential in nature. So there's some multifamily to directly east, and it's currently under development and under the same development company that's working on this project. There's retail and professional service uses to the north, Regency at River Valley, which is a multifamily development to the south, the Village, which has a variety of commercial and non-retail uses. There's some professional offices and other types of uses in the development there. And then there's county land as well as State Highway 55 or Eagle Road to our west. Kleiner Park is also a large regional draw. Pretty great civic use that has a variety of pathways and playgrounds and places for people to recreate. It's quite large. So this is the preliminary plat that we are asking for your approval on this evening. Comprised of 5 lots, range in size from about 36,000 square feet to 63,000 square feet. Cross access will be granted internally to each of the lots, and we are planning on connecting to Copper Canary, which is to the south. They recently came through with a development agreement modification sometime last year, and will comply with whatever they decide to do with their back edge road that goes through their property. So as part of our preliminary plat, we will provide 25 feet of landscaping to the adjacent residential use, the village apartments to our east. And we'll be integrating the site with vehicular and pedestrian connectivity, as I will show later. So as part of this application to City Council, we will be requesting a right-in, right-out location or access point to Eagle Road, which is shown on our south boundary through that private driveway. This is something we've been coordinating with ITD for the past couple of years. They have approved a conceptual striping plan. And recently we were coordinating with them and they said that, this is conceptually approved. We just need to submit the formal permitting once construction plans are finalized, and we're kind of further along in the process. So we've also, our client's been coordinating with the Copper Canary property a fair amount on this access point. I know the city's been talking with that property as well as us for a while on consolidating the access points that are currently used to our north and south. This is the existing concept plan that's in the development agreement that we will be asking to modify. It shows 4 different pad sites, which were associated with 4 lots. We've changed the concept plan to be more consistent with the lots that we're now requesting, which are 5, as well as a different vision for the property. So along with our development agreement, we're asking for 2 conceptual plans to be attached. Where both concept plans include a convenience store, which is at the northwest corner of the site. And the first concept shows a drive-through, which will be at the southwest corner. The first concept shows 3 building pads of different sizes on 3 different lots. And the second, this is just a rendering to kind of give you an idea of how it would be landscaped. Pedestrian connectivity would be provided on the north, south, and the 10-foot multi-use pathway on the west side adjacent to Eagle Road. There would also be some plaza spaces that are on the south side, kind of along here. You can see my cursor. And this would provide a nice central area for folks within this entire region to hang out, especially if they're coming over from Kleiner Park to access maybe the convenience store or get to some of the other commercial uses that are in this area. This is our second concept plan, which includes the convenience store as well as the drive-through. This one shows a hotel concept, which would go across the 3 property lines. And if this was the concept that was going to be pursued, we would just do a property boundary adjustment to consolidate those lines to make sure it wouldn't be an issue for building code stuff. And this also shows the plaza spaces on the south side as well as pedestrian connectivity throughout. I will show you a couple of exhibits later that kind of highlight the pedestrian connectivity to make it a little bit clearer too. And a rendering, so you can see how nicely landscaped it'll be. It'll be really consistent with what's in the area as far as the 10-foot multi-use pathway, and we'll provide a nice kind of a last puzzle piece for this area because it's really an infill spot that's been undeveloped for quite some time. So this is the city's future land use map that's associated with the comprehensive plan. The area in brown is mixed use regional, and that's the land use that's designated and kind of guides how the property develops in the future. East of Eagle Road between Ustick and Fairview, so it's kind of like an L shape here, is about 150 acres. So our site's about 5 acres. It's a pretty small percentage of the overall land use for this area, most of which has already been developed with some civic uses or commercial uses, as well as some professional uses in the village apartment or the village shopping center. And then there are grocery and kind of some professional and retail uses to the north, as well as the multifamily that we kind of talked about earlier. This is a pedestrian connectivity exhibit to show you exactly how much pedestrian connections this development will be providing. So the village apartments are located on the east side here, quite a few pedestrian connections throughout that development. And we will be marrying the 2 projects together by bringing kind of the east-west connections through. And really it'll provide, if you can, look at Kleiner Park, if you go further west, you can take a variety of paths up north. And if you wanted to access maybe this drive-through restaurant, there would be a few different options to get over there. So we felt that this would really show kind of how this project will help to bridge that gap and contribute to the overall kind of open space and pedestrian connectivity here. So this is the proposed access to State Highway 55. As Sonia mentioned, you won't be making a recommendation on this tonight, but it is important, I think, to this project because it's going to be an integral part of how the site is accessed. It's also going to help alleviate a lot of issues, I guess, that already exist on Eagle Road. So I think we're all familiar with Eagle Road. It's a road that's supposed to be a pretty high traffic volume and fast pace, but there are a lot of access points. And so this project would consolidate 4 of those existing access points. The Copper Canary property here, this access point was supposed to be temporary. So with this, the access point that we're proposing here as a right in, right out, that would eliminate these 4 access points and really create a more consolidated place for cars to safely enter and exit. So we're in agreement with the majority of the staff report and appreciate their analysis and all the coordination that they've helped us on with this project. But there are a few conditions that will be associated with the development agreement that we would like to request modification of. So we, our council submitted some a memo basically outlining these conditions and how we would like to change them. And I just want to go through it quickly so that we can kind of cover that. The first one is the first condition under the development agreement conditions, and it's to depict non-retail, commercial, office, or civic uses for a minimum of 50% of the development area on exhibit X 1.0, which is the first concept plan that showed the 3 buildings on the east side, unless commission or council finds that this isn't applicable because this property is part of a larger mixed-use regional designated area. This doesn't apply if the property develops with the hotel as proposed in Exhibit 2. So in order to afford flexibility for our client, we really would like to modify this or remove this condition because we do feel that given the size of the property, which is about 5 acres, in the overall scheme of the mixed use regional land use, it's a pretty small piece. And we feel that the intent of the mixed use regional zone has been fulfilled with all of the other uses that we've kind of talked about. So the civic, that's Kleiner Park, the commercial uses in the village, as well as to the north. And then, some of the professional service uses that are available to the north as well as to the south, as well as the multifamily residential properties, and then a variety of single family residential properties as well within this kind of mixed use regional zone. The second one was related to specific details for the integrated plaza / open space areas shall be provided with a first certificate of zoning compliance. The applicant can relocate open space plaza areas depicted on the plan with director approval once specific tenants are known. We request to keep the plaza areas as we've shown on the south part of the site. And this is really so that we kind of know what to expect for folks. And additionally, we would prefer that these not be associated with the first certificate of zoning compliance. It's pretty limiting depending on who comes in first. And if it's not contiguous with whichever property comes in first, it would be hard to make that happen. So that's how we're proposing to modify that condition. And the third condition was on concept plan 1 labeled as X 1.0. Again, that's the first concept with the 3 buildings on the east side. Some or all of the buildings along the eastern boundary should be rotated and or relocated, and a shared plaza area or green space area added to a more central location within the development for better integration, including a central pathway connection to the open space and front pad sites. We request to keep this building alignment as shown for concept 1 with the plaza spaces and open spaces on the south. This will really afford more flexibility for future tenants and will allow them to configure the buildings in whatever way they would like to within the building pads, as long as they meet the setbacks and dimensional standards for the CG zone, and would provide a nice buffer for residential uses to the east from the future commercial that'll be located there, as well as Eagle Road. We also feel that this building alignment will provide better visibility for commercial users from Eagle Road, which is important for the viability of their businesses and to make sure that they're contributing to the economy here. So the fourth one is if the site develops with concept plan 2, which is labeled as X 2.0, the applicant shall construct a 5-foot sidewalk on the east boundary and provide a decorative crosswalk across the drive aisle of the multifamily portion of the development to enhance pedestrian connectivity. We request that that sidewalk remain as depicted on the concept plan, which I will bring up. We believe that the additional pathway along the east boundary will be redundant because there are already several options between and through the village apartments. We don't think that this pathway would benefit anyone that would be using the hotel or the commercial properties, and think that it would just be an unused pathway essentially. So prefer to keep the pathway directly adjacent to the hotel so those folks can use it and easily access shopping and other services to the north and south. We do agree, though, I think staff had written that they wanted a connection right down here to the village apartments, and we agree to do that connection. We think that makes a lot of sense. And we will follow code requirements as far as special pavement or differentiating it from the pavement. So as I mentioned, we're really excited for this project, and it's been a long time coming. And I think, you know, having 2 concept plans attached to this development agreement will provide our client the flexibility that's needed to really make it a successful project. It fulfills a lot of the city's goals, and I think it'll be a wonderful addition to Meridian. So excited for it, and I'll stand for questions if you have any. Our development team is here as well, our client and council. If you have questions for them, they can come up and answer those.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for applicant or staff? None? All right. Thank you very much. We'll
Thank you.
get back to you after the public testimony. Do we have anybody signed up? Okay.
We have a Leo Burtz.
No. So no, anybody else want to come up and testify at all? Do we have anybody online?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Not to testify, but may I just add a piece of clarification
Absolutely.
for the commission in particular? So this is one of these hybrid applications where you saw from the presentation this evening, particularly from the applicant, where a lot of discussion relative to the proposed modification to the development agreement. And then we also have the topic as part of the application is the preliminary plat. And so this is one of those odd types of applications in our unified development code where it talks about the responsibilities of the commission vis-a-vis the department director, vis-a-vis the city council. The commission is tasked as a recommending body relative to the preliminary plat. But with respect to the proposed modification to the development agreement, the recommending body, so to speak, is the community development director, not the commission. So even though you heard a lot of testimony about the proposed modification to the development agreement, that's really not directly within your purview. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that piece, but I would also say it may be difficult to talk about one without the other. And so I don't want you to feel artificially constrained. And if you need to talk about the bigger picture to understand, you know, the preliminary plat better, I think that's all fair game. But I just wanted the commission to be aware that really in terms of from the code perspective, your recommendation is specific to the preliminary plat. That all make sense? Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much. Appreciate the clarification on that. Nobody else wants to come up and testify? Is there, I was going to say, would the applicant like to add anything or close with anything? With them signifying no, can I get a motion to close the public testimony?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to close public testimony.
Second.
Been moved to close public testimony for file number H 2022-0046. All in favor, say aye.
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 No opposed, motion carries. Public hearing is closed. Who would like to go first?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
so based on city council in regard to our goal tonight, the way the buildings are situated and the open space and all that, that's the development agreement, correct? We're really talking about whether or not this is designed for mixed use regional or retail or general commercial, correct? Based on where the buildings are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Lorcher. As I said, it may be difficult to break those things apart. The preliminary plat, which is within your purview as a recommending body vis-a-vis the proposed change to the development agreement. But really, the issue before you is a preliminary plat, and maybe staff can, or planning staff can put that slide up. Do you have the slide that just shows the preliminary plat? So really, this is, if you wanted to kind of zero in, like what precisely is your recommendation? It's relative to the preliminary plat that's on your screen now and in the chambers here. So your recommendation is relative to the preliminary plat before you, but to the extent you need to talk about the bigger picture of the concept plans that you saw and how it might relate to this topic, I think that's fair game.
Well, with that being said, I mean, to put in a mixed use, I'm a little concerned about a convenience store with the high traffic off of Eagle Road. I'm trying to think if there's anything else like that right there. But because of the right in and right out, I don't know how much use a convenience store would get, because it would be challenging to get in and out of there. Is there a gas station proposed with it as well? A gas station as well. And then some kind of drive-through, which we have plenty along Eagle Road. I guess, you know, without getting into the weeds, you know, the city council may, or the city planners made recommendations as far as how the buildings should be situated for the development agreement, which should be followed. But if we're just talking about our recommendation of whether or not this should be a drive-through, a convenience store, and some stores, I guess I would like to hear from you, who've had more experience with this, on whether this would be in the best interest of the city.
Well, and I'll kind of go about it a little different way. I mean, looking at the plat, I mean, you know, you're looking at a bunch of squares, you know, or odd shapes on a map, then basically anything that can go there that would fit mixed use residential, so, or mixed use basically. So with that, I mean, it is difficult not to get into the weeds a little bit on the DA plan. So on the DA modification, and I mean, the one thing that I will say is the hotel motel, that seems to fit a lot better. For me, it fits a lot better, mainly because with the residential all being lined up creates that wall effect, which is hideous. So it's not, to me, that is just it creates a dead space behind the commercial use buildings with the apartments. It's hard to see back there. You know, that in and of itself is a concern for me. With that also affects, you know, obviously the layout of the preliminary plat, because if you do turn the building sideways, then, you know, is this plat well adjusted for that? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not that kind of engineer. So, I mean, that's the biggest concern that I have with it, as the preliminary plat and the DA modification kind of come together. So, I mean, the others, you know, other than that, I have no big issues with that. I know there's been a lot of work done with ITD in order to get, you know, the right in, right out, in order to get the access points created as they are. The property to the south has been, through here before. We've had a lot of conversations about this piece of property. So in all, I'm happy to see it develop. I mean, to me, this is an infill project for sure. That said, I think either the hotel or turn the building sideways has been recommended by staff would be in your best interest for sure, in order to make sure this fits correctly and is, of good use for the community. As far as some of the other things that have been in there, I mean, I understand this is a small piece of a larger piece of mixed use. That said, I like properties to stand on their own. I always use the example of, we have developers that come in and say, well, we don't need to have as much common space because, well, there's a school next door to us, without making any kind of contribution to the school at all. You really can't rely on your neighbors in order to fill in what you're supposed to be doing. That's the way it has been. That's the way it should be. So I'm not going to rely on my neighbor to augment my goals. So and that's just a recommendation as you go to city council. I'm sure I can't speak for any of them, but I watch their meetings every week. So fairly certain that that's going to come up. Does that help, Commissioner Lorcher? I mean, essentially that's, how I'm tying it all together is it is difficult to not tie in everything from the DA mod. But it is, it's not in our purview in order to recommend approval for that. So city council does listen to what we have to say sometimes. So that's the recommendations that I would give, is either go with the hotel plan or turn the buildings and then, reconfigure some of that public space or open space that's out there in order to fit in with the recommendation that Sonia has made. We can't tell you how to design your property. We can just tell you what might work and what might not, and then it's up to you to design it.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a whole lot more to add. Other than I really would echo your recommendation that I guess of the two options, I really like the idea of the hotel as well. To the extent that carries any weight with city council, that would be my recommendation. I like some of the things I see. I like the abandonment of some of the access points into one. I think that's a positive. I did have a question similar to maybe Commissioner Lorschner, whereby, yeah, the folks going northbound, I guess on Eagle, it's an easy access. The folks coming southbound, I guess they'd have to go U-stick and then around that other parallel road escapes me at the moment, but and then come in the other way or go in through the village. So yeah, the convenience store doesn't bother me per se, other than if it's only accessible one way, I guess that could be, you could ask, the value of it. So, so not a whole lot to add, but just some comments, hopefully for consideration for city council or others.
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go right ahead, Commissioner Stoddard.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo the same exact stuff. I'm really happy to see the consolidated access points. I'm really glad to see it being developed. I think that's great. Same, I don't mind a convenience store at all. And I definitely agree also that I think a hotel in that space would be nice, especially with the subdivision, behind it. I think it would just kind of be a nice transition there. And so anyway, I just kind of have the same kind of thoughts and feelings.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
Sonia, do we have to add anything into our approval as far as modifications are concerned, or is it as is? We need to add anything in for?
I think, and that question probably stems from the modifications that Sonia has in the staff report really are not related to the preliminary plat.
Oh.
So I think that the recommendations that we give are on the preliminary plat, albeit you can include a recommendation in a motion. So.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve to City Council file number H 2022-0046 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of November 17th, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item number H 2022-0046 with no modifications. All in favor, say aye.
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 No opposed. Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. This time I'd like to open file number H 2022-0072 Center Point Apartments. And we will begin with staff report.
Mr. Chair, just give me 1 second so I can pull up the applicants. So we're ready for that when we get there.
Sorry, time's up. We're continuing it.
It's okay to be mean tonight. That's
As I was going to say, I don't get a lot of opportunity to be mean to you, so I got to take advantage of it.
sounds good.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Now we're back. Here we go. So my first item tonight, as noted, is for Center Point Apartments. The application before the commission tonight is for a conditional use permit for 213 multifamily units on approximately 10 acres in the CG zoning district. The application encompasses one of two parcels that surround the hard corner, the southwest corner of Eagle and Ustick Roads. These parcels were part of a development agreement modification and CUP in 2019 that removed the subject parcels from existing DA to enter into a new DA to obtain approval for a new athletic club and spa, which code calls an indoor recreation facility, and that was known as Villa Sport. The CUP approval for that has expired and the property has been sold to the current owner. Earlier this year, the applicant did receive a new DA modification, 2022-0035, was approved end of July approximately, to enter into a new agreement with a concept plan depicting multifamily residential on the 10-acre piece and commercial space on the smaller 1-acre piece that's directly along Eagle Road that is not part of the CUP. You can see it vaguely here in the bottom right. The subject CUP is the next step in establishing the approved use and concept plan, and the submitted site plan and elevations are substantially consistent with the concept plan within the DA. Through the recent DA modification, staff found that the proposed project and additional multifamily units to be generally consistent with the mixed-use regional designation because this subject area consists of several retail, restaurant, office, and residential uses available to the region. And the addition of these units would not oversaturate this area with residential. The main points of discussion through that MDA process were regarding traffic, parking, and the proposed building heights. I just lost my place. I'm sorry. There we go. The applicant did an abbreviated traffic study to obtain updated traffic generation counts. ACHD did not require a full traffic impact study because the proposed project generates less than 40% of the anticipated vehicle trips from the previously approved Villa Sport site. So that one anticipated about 3,200 trips. This one anticipates plus about 1,250 trips. This is a significant reduction in vehicle trips for the adjacent local streets and the private street to the southeast, as well as the intersection of Eagle and Ustick. In addition, parking for the units was heavily discussed by the city council. City council required that each area of the project to be self-parked so that residents would not have to cross any drive aisle or cross Center Point Way to get to their assigned parking space. So it's kind of broken into three pieces. You have the west side, west of Center Point Way, three here that had to be self-parked. This central section had to be self-parked, and then this area had to be self-parked. This parking issue coincided with the originally proposed building heights of 4 stories for the 3 largest buildings in the center. Through the public hearing process, the applicant reduced the building height of those 3 buildings to 3 stories and proposed a new 2-story building along the west boundary. Following the changes to the building height, which reduced the unit count, the applicant was able to self-park each area of the site as directed by city council. The submitted site plan continues compliance with these DA provisions from the council. The submitted plans show compliance with all dimensional and specific use standards, including but not limited to building height, setbacks, access, and the required parking. Access for this development is proposed via a shared drive aisle connection to Ustick, which is this here. It's an unnamed, it connects to Cajun Lane, so everybody just keeps calling it Cajun Lane, but technically it's unnamed, just to be specific there. It is also, access is also via a public street connection to Center Point Way. So Center Point Way is here. Both Centerpoint Way and the drive aisle are existing today. Specific to the proposed apartment buildings, access is proposed via drive aisle connections to Centerpoint Way and the drive aisle on the east side. So there's 3 connections to Centerpoint Way, 2 here, crossing each other, 1 here. On the east side, you have the access here, and then these access points here. The shared drive aisle, like I noted, does connect to North Cajun Lane to the south, which is a private street. It connects from Ustick through Jackson Square to the south and then out to Eagle Road. This drive aisle was previously acquired with the previous Villa Sport approvals and the Wadsworth site that's on the hard corner for cross access and interconnectivity to and from Ustick. In addition, the Bienville Square plat, which is the plat to the south, requires cross access that depicts it on the plat over Cajun Lane and out to Eagle Road from this site, which furthers that there was anticipation that traffic, some form of traffic would flow from this project to the south and out to Eagle Road. North Centerpoint Way is an existing local street that connects the Bienville Square subdivision, which is known as Jackson Square, to this site and to Ustick Road via the public road. It is signalized at the intersection of Centerpoint and Ustick. Since publication of the staff report, ACHD did issue their final staff report and is not requiring any additional road improvements for the proposed project due to the reduction in anticipated vehicle trips from this site. So the 2 things that they required previously was quote unquote Cajun Lane to be constructed, a right-hand deceleration lane to be constructed here, which has been constructed already. That was the requirements at the time. This applicant is proposing to widen Centerpoint Way here to help and stripe this area for a right-hand turn lane and a center and through lane here. So that was discussed at council, not required, but it was proposed by the applicant and it should help any traffic movements in that area. According to the site plan, the applicant is proposing 449 spaces with 205 of them to be covered by a carport or located within a garage. 12 spaces are in attached garages for buildings D and E, and they're tuck under garages, 6 on each building. Code would require 380 parking spaces with 189 covered. Therefore, the applicant's proposing parking well in excess of code. In addition, as noted, the DA requires that each section of the site is self-parked, and the applicant has complied with that as well. The applicant is proposing to complete the arterial sidewalk along Ustick and proposes multiple micropaths throughout the site for added pedestrian connectivity. Staff supports the proposed sidewalk and pathway network, except for the lack of connectivity at the very southern, at the southeast corner of where the southern micropath does not connect anywhere. So this area right around here. There's no internal connection to this micropath from inside the site. And it also does not connect to any sidewalk along the shared drive aisle because there's just not enough room right here to add a sidewalk. So there's minimal opportunity to access this desirable micropath within the site. Therefore, staff is recommending a loss of 1 parking space around this planter island. I don't really care which side, just somewhere in there. And then add another sidewalk connection to the north so that it can cross this drive aisle and connect to the sidewalk there to have another access point from inside the site. The proposed landscaping complies with all UDC requirements. In addition, the applicant is depicting dense vegetation that exceeds code requirements within the south and west buffers, with some of the proposed trees to be evergreen variety for year-round screening. Specifically, the buffer along the south and west boundary is 25 feet wide. Code would only require 10 feet, so the applicant is proposing a much bigger buffer than would be required. Prior to the hearing, there were 2 pieces of public testimony, both from neighbors. Mr. Steve Grant, he had questions about the continuation of a brick wall or a CMU wall along the west boundary, and also noted traffic concerns with Centerpoint Way, specifically asked about would it be striped for the right-hand turn lane, et cetera. And then Mr. Schofield, who lives to the west and abuts the shared property boundary on that side, had concerns over the 2-story building looking into his backyard, as well as the wall along the boundary as well. The applicant is proposing to continue the wall along the west boundary as required with the development agreement. Staff did recommend approval as the project complies with UDC requirements as well as the DA, with just some conditions of approval regarding some minor things. Other than that, staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. The applicant like to come forward? Good evening. Just need your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
We good.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Kekkeritz. I am with Givens Pursley, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant MGM Meridian LLC. Mike Mafia with MGM will be presenting with me, and other representatives of the applicant are here and available to answer questions, including our architect, Trevor Shore, who's with BDE, and our civil engineer, Brandon McDougald, who is with Kimley Horn, are here with me today. And we also really want to thank Joe for all of his help here on this. He's really helped us figure out and massage this over the months to try to get a plan that's really going to work well for everyone. And we also want to say congrats on your last public hearing here. Okay, so moving on. Okay. We're proposing, just to give you a little bit more of a background, we are proposing to develop the Center Point mixed use project. It's approximately, the overall parcel is 11 acres and it's near the intersection of Ustick and Eagle Roads. It is an infill site. There's already been approved for a drive-through on the commercial portion. The corner is also developing with a commercial use, and then south along Eagle is additionally a commercial use. We're only here tonight for the CUP for the multifamily portion of the development. As mentioned, the property is designated mixed use regional on the flume, which calls for the mix of employment, retail, and residential uses, with residential densities ranging between 6 to 40 units per acre. We are proposing just slightly under 20 units per acre. As the staff report notes, adding higher density residential on the site will support the surrounding commercial and employment uses, providing nearby customers and employees that want to be able to walk to work. The staff report also finds that this multi-use development will not oversaturate the area with residential. The site is zone CG and we're not seeking any rezone. It has CG zoning to the north, the east, across Eagle Road, the little infill site, partially to the south. And then there is directly the residential to the south is R8 and R15. There are 2 R2 residences located along the western boundary of the property. That I'll let Mike take over here.
Evening, just start with your name and address, or sorry, yeah, name and address, and floor is yours.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Mafia, and owner of these 2 parcels on Meridian and Usick. I am the owner, sole owner of this property. I'm a private developer. I do select projects. I'm passionate about development and take a responsibility very seriously. I target projects that are infill and have immediate proximity to amenities such as this site. I went back through my notes. My first meeting with Bill and Joe was 14 months ago, and came and worked with several local developers and consultants with a blank slate, trying to figure out what is the best approach for this site. It's the second busiest intersection in Idaho, so it's very dense. It's very busy. The site did have some inherent limitations. You can see the kind of odd shape to it, but it also has this milk lateral that divides the site with a 30-foot setback, and then it has the 2 drive aisles, Center Point in the unnamed Cajun Lane, which bifurcates the site, and it created some challenges. Working with staff and various consultants, we looked at various uses, commercial, multifamily, and decided that this was the best use. Even though we're not here for the CUP, there is a retail portion on the Eagle with a strong connection to the multifamily site. As Joe mentioned, we started with our MDA application in front of council. Just quickly, this was the original site plan. It was 259 units. It was a 4-story building, elevator served. And we were using the parking field to the west for kind of that central portion of the development to qualify the parking. And again, as Joe mentioned, the feedback from council was to go back to the drawing board and self-park each quadrant between those drive aisles. This is where we came back. There were also some concerns about the height of the buildings from neighbors. And we ultimately reduced this to a 3-story core, 3 buildings in the middle, and then the western building is a 2-story building. And then to the east are those buildings. F and E are also 3 stories with tuck under garages. But this shows the evolution of the site plan. And then for our CUP hearing or application, we, and to back step a little bit through this process, we had 2 pre-application meetings, both for the MDA for the CUP, 2 neighborhood meetings, and several meetings with staff. So the site plans I'm going through was actually 12 months of work of modeling and working with Joe. And the change in this CUP application was we increased our open space between the 3 larger buildings and increased the turf area that was mentioned in the staff report. I'll speak to it later, but we did add voluntarily more screening than required, particularly to the west, with a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. I've met with the neighbors, understand their concerns for screening, and believe we'll be able to mitigate it. That 2-story building to the west, the first floor is 10 feet at the finished floor, and we're confident we can get evergreens to to that elevation fairly quickly. Here is an updated rendering. As I spoke earlier, I've toured this market. I've been working in Boise for a long time with developers, going back 20 years. And, I really try to focus on which projects are successful, borrow from those successes, and then avoid the failures. And this vernacular is, I would say, a somewhat contemporary approach on a craftsman style home that I think will complement the area and blend with it and make that transition from a very high traffic commercial area to the residential transition, especially with the 3-story and kind of the breaks in the elevations. On our vertical elements, we have board and batten, and then on the horizontal, we have a shiplap. And then the decks are enclosed with one side open. There was a comment in the staff report to incorporate just to meet the design standard, and we will include brick or masonry to reflect that comment. We have interior walk-ups. And you can't see it in this plan, but I do focus a lot on our landscape plan and creating spaces that are approachable, promote gathering. Too many projects, in my opinion, are overdone with dry rock beds and pavement. And we're really trying to promote a landscape that emulates the natural environment, the high desert. People come to this area for that connection to the outdoor spaces, and we intend to borrow from it, and something I pay a lot of attention to. These are just some select elevations. I think that's all I have for now. I'll turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Thank you. I just want to point, we're just going to focus a little bit on some of the cross sections because we do know some of the neighbors continue to be concerned about having any sort of residential development here. They were also, I don't know how many of you are here for the Villa Sport. They were also very concerned about that. And we actually believe this is a much better fit for the neighborhood than the Villa Sport. As you can see on this cross section, This is a 3-story building. And the Villa Sport was only 10 feet from the property boundary, which made it 65 feet from the nearest home. Here, we are 100 feet from the property boundary, and we are 155 feet from the nearest home behind us. Villa Sport had also received a variance to be able to have speakers within 25 feet of the property line. That has been eliminated, and instead there will be trees and a pathway through that area. Here is a cross section. The 2 homes to the direct west are understandably somewhat concerned about this development coming to their neighborhood. In this case, we are 25 feet from the property boundary. Then the house is an additional 95 feet away, which creates 115 feet total. There are going to be on the upper floor of this building, there will be 6 balconies. The balconies are the private open space required by code. And so we anticipate that being, as Mike mentioned, about 16 feet if you were standing on the 2nd floor and you're a tall person looking out. And so we're trying to do a heavy mix of deciduous and evergreens to really help screen that property. In addition, the neighbors had asked for the masonry wall, and we have agreed to do that along this boundary as well to really help continue to alleviate any noise and sound concerns there. We do meet all of the CUP criteria. I'll go through really briefly. We accommodate the use. We meet all the city code, as Joe mentioned. It is harmonious with a comprehensive plan. We're compatible. We are not adversely affecting other property. We're right in the middle of the city. There's all the public utilities are there. This is not excessive traffic. It's reduced traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors, none of those sort of things. And there's no historic features on the site. Also for multifamily, as I'll discuss here briefly, there's ample open space, lots of amenities, it's quality buildings and designs, and really try to integrate into the surrounding community. Just touching briefly on the comp plan, I have 2 slides on this. I could have had many, many more. It hits at least 14 goals of the comprehensive plan, including its infill development in a growth area. It's in the center of the city. It's a place where residents can live, shop, dine, and play, all in close proximity. There are diverse housing options. It's a mix from studios to 3 bedrooms. There's great pedestrian access, and public services are available. We don't have to go through all of them. Traffic is always a concern. As mentioned, there are 1,600 fewer daily trips than the Villa Sport. That doesn't mean there's no cars, but there is definitely less. That results in 80 fewer weekday morning trips and 166 fewer weekday PM trips. One of the things that the neighbors to the south have raised is the concern about the cars cutting through their development and getting out to the road, out to Eagle Road, where their development has a right in, right out access on Bourbon Street. And what they found, what the traffic engineers found, is that cars will be going around the edges of that development, but not through it on the private interior streets. And they estimate that there'll be 30 outbound trips in the AM peak hour added to that intersection where cars are trying to make the right-hand turn to get onto Eagle to get to the interstate. Because of the right in, right out, there's hardly any inbound. And then at night, there'll be 15 outbound trips in the PM hour. As far as open space, the code requires approximately 2.23 acres. We're providing 2.53 acres and possibly more, depending on how you want to interpret different portions of the code. In any event, it's over. There is excess open space here. That does not include the arterial street buffer. As we've talked about, there's enhanced landscaping on the west, the masonry wall on the west. There's the pathway along the southern boundary, and then there's also micro paths throughout. I'll show on our last slide, we've already incorporated the micro path that Joe just asked for. That's already been added because the connectivity and the ability to get in and around this is really important. The amenities include a clubhouse with a business lounge, multiple plaza areas, swimming pool, fitness facility, outdoor kitchen, a dog run, the micropath system through this area, and a bicycle repair room. I knew I was running out of time. And here is the revised site plan, where we did eliminate the parking space. We've widened that road. One of the neighbors were concerned about Center Point. ACHD is recommending that it be widened. We are absolutely agreeing to widen it. And then we've also straightened the sidewalk along U Stick. And with that, we will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners? Go right ahead.
Chairman, just one quick question. Ms. Kekaritz, does that Keijon Lane, is that an outlet to U Stick?
It is. It's a right in, right out onto
Okay.
U Stick.
So Center Point is obviously a light in a pretty big
Yes.
intersection. So there won't be a light there. It'll just be a right in, right out.
Yes.
And can you attempt to get into that left lane to go north on Eagle Road from there? Because that's a little further closer to the intersection, right?
Because of how close it is to the intersection, I think that would be pretty difficult, depending on the time of day, of course, but it would be, I would think, fairly difficult to go across those lanes of traffic to get out to U Stick to go north.
Okay. And then just a separate question, but another one. There's just two lots to the west of that two-story,
Yes,
just two homeowner lots there.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Marcher, anything? Commissioner Sonder, do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Joy, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
We have Jared Schofield.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Jared Schofield, 1566 North Leslie Way. I have one of the properties immediately on the west side of this property. First, I'd like to say I've had the chance to meet Mike, and he is a good guy. I don't mind him at all. It's just my biggest concern with this. Well, I have several concerns. My biggest one is the safety and the security of my family. When I purchased my property 12 years ago, we were told it was going to be non-retail commercial. So anticipating, whatever it be, doctor's offices, dance studio, whatever it may be, something that's going to have set hours. It's going to be not going to be a large structure, even if it's two-story. It's not going to have people there all night. It's not, very limited. The block wall that's actually there already was also going to be built and along the same alignment that it currently exists, which was also shown in Villa Sports plan and every other plan that has been submitted before that. So we would still like to see that wall on that same alignment, and we would like to see or not have people looking into our backyard. I have small children, and any of you as parents probably have similar concerns with small kids of people staring directly into your backyard as they are playing and spending their time out there with their friends. And I, as a parent, am deathly terrified. I have 3 girls. I'm in this day and age, security and safety of my family is my first and utmost priority. I do appreciate Mike wanting to add additional trees to be able to create a landscape buffer there. That is very much appreciated. The only problem I have with that is if this is not an immediate buffer. This is something that will not occur. Those trees will not reach a height of any kind of cover for 4 to 5 years at the soonest. That's just reality. I wish it wasn't that way, but unfortunately it is. I have nothing against Mike and the development. I like what he's done with the main structures. They will look nice. I believe personally, I think the number of people this will bring in it will and truly create a headache on traffic. We already have people, and Mike has seen it too, he's seen it today, people that cut down Center Point at a high rate of speed, cut through the neighborhood to be able to get out by Jimmy John's onto Eagle. They also do the same thing when traffic starts to get backed up. Every morning, they cut down Leslie Way and do the same thing, traveling down that road at 40 to 50 miles an hour when kids are getting out of school to be able to access onto Eagle. People have found the shortcuts. That's the nature of people. People are lazy. They want to go faster. But this is only going to increase that. It's going to increase the safety risk to the kids that are walking down Leslie Way or down Center Point to get to River Valley Elementary. That this whole community needs it to be safe. And again, not opposed to it, but we'd like to see something safe for our kids and our families. Thank you for your time. Do you have any
Thank you.
questions?
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
There is no one else signed up, Mr. Chair.
You want to sign up? Anybody in chambers would like to? Ma'am, come on up. Oh, wait till you get up to the microphones there. and
Good
just-
evening. Thank you for letting me speak. I wasn't going to say anything tonight because every time that
Oh, we need your name and
Janet
address for
Bailey,
the record.
2925 North Center Point. I know they're going in. I've been adamantly opposed to this whole thing since it started because I live on Center Point. I am the neighborhood watch chair. I started it. I walked every neighbor in that place. So I know what is happening in that neighborhood. Traffic is speeding down Center Point. I don't know if you have current records, but we had a crime come through our neighborhood. And now I know this is not related, but it's an increase. My husband's tires were slashed and 4 others on the street were. Then we had another accident, a huge accident at the entrance of Ustick and Center Point just a couple weeks ago. So these kinds of things are increasing, and with putting all of those apartments stacked in there and the top layer they took off, they shoved it over in the corner where the narrow Center Point, I granted if he's gonna, expand it, yay, but the traffic coming around that corner, somebody's gonna have a problem. Somebody's gonna look for somebody to sue because the traffic just sitting there. I tell my kids, don't go out, lag back. The traffic, everybody runs it in the morning. It's several light changes to get through. In the afternoon, Eagle and Ustick is backed up so far that you can't get out there. And adding all of this extra parking is gonna add extra traffic in the neighborhood. I've seen it, I watch it, I live it. I don't know what the studies are. They don't live there. They don't know. But the people that do live there, I mean, that was our retirement there. And it's to the point where that whole neighborhood, it's so stressful now thinking about what's coming and how it's changing. I feel like, oh my God, how do I get out of here? There's a lot of retired people in there, a lot of older people, and this added traffic, it's gonna make it worse. And I don't care what he says about building the corner. I disagree. And I know there's a lot of people in there that disagree. We've even requested a gate because people will turn down Center Point, flip a U-ey and go back. The lady on the corner at the beginning of the subdivision, she counted cars. She counted like 40 cars within 30 minutes that flipped it and went back out. So like Jared said, they've learned the shortcuts and they're zooming down Center Point. Maybe they don't cut Cajun, but they can get out going down the end of Center Point and following it around. You come out by Discount Tire. Oh, sorry, I wasn't going to say anything, but I just think that this needs to be heard over and over again. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in chambers like to testify? I don't think we have anybody online that is. I think we got one person online raising their hand.
You can speak if you unmute yourself.
My name's Steve Grant. I live at 1534 North Leslie Way, next door to JR. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Couple of concerns. Number one, the alignment of the wall that JR spoke of. Just so you're aware, the alignment of the wall sits 5 feet, approximately 5 feet to the east of the property line. And I'm not sure what Mike has in mind in terms of continuing that wall along the same alignment, but I would hate to see it jog 5 feet going beyond the property line you are aware it's a masonry wall. It's going to require footings and to maintain the same alignment is, I think, the appropriate thing to do for aesthetics. The second comment I have is the traffic justification for Villasport was based on that being a commercial property. This is all residential, so I think the peak hour impact on Centerpoint with people coming off the west, those 2-story apartments, trying to turn left onto to exit that facility is going to be a problem. And I just think the road is not wide enough, even if they widen so there's a right turn lane onto Ustick from Centerpoint. That helps, but I think traffic's going to stack and create all kinds of problems that I'm not sure a traffic study is taking them into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Okay, would anybody else like to testify? All right,
Mr. Chair.
Twice. You can't testify, Joe.
No, I can't testify now.
Go ahead.
Since it's come up twice, I did want to discuss the wall placement. That's something that staff and the applicant had discussed with the police department, and they don't want to create this 5-foot dead zone between a wall and a fence, which typically is where crime does occur in those dark areas that nobody can get to very well and police can't see. So we had decided to shift the wall back towards the property line because of the existing structures as well as the required footings for a wall. It's not going to be exactly on the property line. I don't know where engineering wise, but probably at least a foot away. And then continue it down and up to Ustick. So there was a thought behind that. It's not that we're trying to change what's already there. It's just they don't want to create a dead zone in there, because of the septet things.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the feedback on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ed.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question on that, Joe, so if there is like a little bit of a foot strip or so, will that be closed off on the capped at the ends, or could someone's?
I'm assuming it'll be capped to some degree, but if not, I mean, you'll be standing on rock or brick or something that's going to be sloped that will go into the bottom of the adjacent fence. So it's not going to be a place you can really get to much.
Yeah. Okay.
Foot will be a lot harder than 5.
Okay. All right. Would the applicant like to come back up?
Elizabeth Keckerit, 601 Bannock. Just in response to a couple of things that were just raised, the alignment of the wall has been discussed, and it is something where it just makes sense to put it as close to the property boundary as possible. There's also, just from a liability standpoint of being an owner and having this extra dead space on the backside of your wall where you don't know what's going on, you can't see it, it becomes difficult to maintain. And so he is looking at placing the wall as close to the edge of the property boundary as possible. As far as the traffic goes through the subdivisions to the south, there is an easement, a cross-access easement, and there has been since 2006, back when this was called the Sadie Creek Development, and it was Sadie Commons below. Could you bring up our presentation again? Where the neighborhood to the south did grant a perpetual non-exclusive easement for cross-access by vehicular and pedestrian traffic, but not parking upon and over roadways that may exist from time to time. They'll design and build the roadways in such a fashion as to permit reasonable access through and across parcel B, which is the one owned by our clients, and they are parcel B, and provide parcel A, which is what's currently before you tonight, and parcel C, which is the corner lot, access to Eagle Road. And so that has been in place. The development was built with this cross-access agreement in place. Their traffic comes through Center Point, through this development, and vice versa. It's been there for quite some time. Additionally, this is still, we have to remember, 40% less traffic than the last approved use here. Any development always is going to bring traffic, but this is significantly less than what's been there before. Additionally, although there was the addition of the smaller two-story building, there was still a net loss between the original proposed plans and what's before you today. We reduced the number from 259 units to 213 units. One of the other things that has come up is the question about traffic speeding on Centerpoint Way. And it's kind of hard. I don't know if I have a good depiction of it, but we do have approval where the road will start at 40 feet wide up by the intersection to Ustick so that you've got space for the turn lanes. And then at the intersections where the drive aisles are, it is going to narrow down and taper to 33 feet, and then it will widen out again. But that really sort of a built-in traffic calming along that road. And in fact, the applicant is working with ACHD and ultimately, if possible, would like that to be even more of a constriction. It's just that right now that's where ACHD is on it. And so it is somewhat of a traffic calming device there. And then just finally, we absolutely understand the neighbors' concerns. I know the applicant is to the west. The applicant is looking at faster growing trees, making sure that some of the trees are evergreen. They don't plant immediately. They don't grow immediately. It does take some time. There was some discussion with City Council about, could you bring in bigger trees, like bigger caliber trees? And what it came down to after talking about that and meeting with the forester, as those trees don't do as well long-term, and they grow slower and they don't stabilize as well. And you're actually much better off putting in the younger, smaller caliber trees. And then over time, they will grow to that bigger one, and you won't be replacing them, spending the money and the effort of replacing trees that die and that then just aren't thriving the way that you would want them to. So with that, I think I'll stand for any more questions.
Okay, thank you. And I have a couple. Mike had indicated that there was talk about possibly eliminating where where the road squeezes there on Center Point. So is what you're saying is you're going to have it squeeze. It's just a matter of how much ACHD allows you to.
Yes.
Okay, that's good because that part of this is very attractive to me as far as being able to kind of mitigate traffic in that area. So the other part of that too is I turn on Center Point Way to go over to Fast Eddie's. So that's where I buy my fuel from. But I do see people turn into there and not understand where they're going. So hopefully having this in there will mitigate that as well. So I think they get confused as to how they get down to some of the parcels that are there to the east of you. So I think that will be helpful in that. As far as the block wall alignment, I kind of understand how that is, why that is not going to align. So I won't go into that very much, but that's everything that I got. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, I thank you for addressing the size of the trees. I was going to ask that very question. Could you get some older growth trees that are already bigger in there? But it sounds like you've already considered that. What about the 5-foot wall there on that west side? Is there any ability to go higher to provide? I'm sympathetic to this homeowner and the gentleman's concerns about, you can look directly down into their backyard and you've got children. I am sympathetic. I just wanted to ask that question.
Well, and I think, was it 6 feet? It's a little, so first, it is already a little bit higher than 6 feet. And there will be the trees. When you really look, there isn't a line going across here. I mean, but once those trees are there, it will really help block this. These are also these patios. They're not extruding off the back even further. If you look at, it's not the ideal picture because it shows an end unit, but they really are sort of inside. They don't extrude. They're covered on 3 sides. And they really only have that one wall. I understand the concern, but it really is trying to keep them stepped back, still meet the code, and really work with the neighbors as much as possible with the design.
Mr. Chair.
Right ahead.
Did want to hit on a couple of those points as well. Mr. Schofield let me know that of the 2 properties adjacent, only one has a fence, and that's his, and it's a chain link. So some of that dead zone piece is gone. However, they could always input a fence and we would still have that issue. I want to verify, I can't remember in code. I think CG only allows 6-foot fence, but it might also be 8 feet. As I'm thinking about it, I think it's 8 feet. So I believe they can go up to 8 foot if you guys required that. But we would, if you make any kind of condition with that, I would recommend just making it broad and work with staff so that we can verify. But I think that that could help quell some of the issues that you're having there. But again, 8 feet is only 8 feet versus the second story, which is the main concern here. Staff at the council hearing, we did talk about the growth of the trees and the higher caliber, and our parks director specifically had stated like they do not like when applicants put in the larger caliber trees at the beginning because they typically they'll die. They transporting them from where they are to the new place just usually doesn't work very well. Secondly, we already have conditions in there that those buffers are to be constructed with phase 1. So they need to be part of the beginning of the development to help get them established prior to occupancy, prior to the buildings probably being constructed, honestly. I don't know if they're going to do the 2-story one first, but I presume they would do the stuff in the center with the clubhouse and everything first and then get to the west, but the boundary buffer should still be constructed with those first buildings. So staff did think about some of this with the timing of it, but I know that Mike would gladly work with the timing portion of that as well.
But the only question I had on the trees, I mean, we say, larger caliper, smaller caliper trees. When to me, it's height. I don't care how big, I don't care how big around it is. If it's 20 feet tall and it's a small, junior tree, then that's still better than having a, 6-foot tree planted there that's going to take 20 years in order to reach, 15 feet. So, I mean, is there some stipulation we can put in there that at least we provide, that the applicant provides something in there that's going to be of some substance? And I know this is a small detail, but at the same time, it's, it's been talked about and it's something that, obviously there's a concern about. So, I mean, as far as the fence height, and the jog and the fence and all that stuff, I think you have to do what you have to do for that, in order to make it fit. I don't see having the fence at a certain height and then continue it on at a different height as being appealing, or, that just doesn't seem like something that would be necessary, knowing that there are going to be things that are going to be in there in the future.
Mr. Chair, I'm not an arborist, so I can't speak too much on the landscaping, but I know that Mike has talked about it before. They can find fast growing, quote unquote, deciduous trees, and then evergreens again are going to probably be the best when it comes to long-term screening. You're year round, but I'll leave that to the applicant.
Okay.
The site plan does show the mix of trees that are currently being proposed, but I didn't write them down and I can't read that small a print, but he can speak to what the mix will be.
I mean, there's an exhausting amount of trees on there, but it is a mix. I mean, there's spruces and there's some firs, and some of them grow 15 inches a year. Some of them grow 25 to 30 inches a year. I've been in this situation before. I just did a project and one retail project of the year because of some of the landscape features. I'm very involved. I'm not a REIT or a large institutional investor. I talk with the landscape crews. I make sure they're planted correctly. I mean, a lot of trees fail, not just because of the health of the tree, but they're planted too shallow or too high. They're not irrigated properly. And as a long-term investor, I mean, the year warranty you usually get on a tree is not sufficient. You're controlling the process from the time you get your order. And, historically, we're rejecting, 5-10% of the specimens because they're not acceptable. So, I mean, I'm very involved in that process, and I don't know how it's never been conditioned. It's a tough one, to condition and qualify it. But, I met JR on site today and I spoke to him, specifically about that and my commitment to getting healthy trees, because you could have the same 7-foot or 10-foot spruce, and depending on what nursery it's coming out of, one could be a lot healthier than the other. And that's the importance of long-term growth is, a healthy specimen.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, I mean, my point is just it's hard to condition something on, no, you have to put in a 12-foot tree. Well, what does that mean, in matter of code or any of that stuff? So it's a concern. It sounds like it's, I mean, you're working through that. You're going to try and put in the best trees to provide the best coverage in the best amount of time. So, and I think that satisfies that for me for sure. Any other questions, commissioners? You guys are all done? All right, thank you very much. Can I get a motion, please, to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0072?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0072 for Centerpoint Apartments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Public hearing is closed. So if somebody would like to go first, or if we've hashed everything out, a motion or?
Mr. Chairman, I feel like I got the answers I was looking for. I appreciate a lot of the efforts that were done from the applicant to not only with the new use, obviously, but with reductions, it seems like, in a lot of things. So I think there's a good faith effort there. I am sympathetic to some of the comments that were made. We get comments about these apartments a lot. And when they come in, there's no great place to put them, it seems like. So is where it is. I'm comfortable with the information I got tonight. That would be my comment.
Any other comments? Commissioner Norcher, go ahead.
After considering all staff and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2022-0072 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of November 17th, 2022, with the following modification. Applicant work with staff to provide safety and privacy of the home surrounding the development.
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2022-0072 with the aforementioned modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
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 No opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, playing musical presentations.
All right. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for item number H 2022-0070 for Night Hills Center Child Care Facility. We will begin with the staff report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my last one for my public serving career for now. I'll probably be back someday. As noted, this is for Night Hills Center Child Care. It is a conditional use permit for a daycare center located on approximately 1 acre of land within the CG zoning district. Because it is more than 12 children, it is classified as a daycare center within the UDC, which requires a conditional use permit. The proposed use is a community serving commercial use that is consistent with the future land use designation of mixed use community. Its proposed location is within the center of a relatively small commercial development, but very nearby existing residential and established residential to the south and southwest. Staff finds that the proposed use will provide a needed use for the nearby community and offer employment opportunities beyond just typical retail jobs like the Dollar Generals to the left to the west. Subject site is part of an approved short plat that has subdivided the existing lot into 2 commercial building lots. This is on the north lot. A salon is all administratively approved on the building lot to the south, but does not yet receive final building permit approval. The proposed use is subject to specific use standards, 11-4-3-9 to be specific. Staff finds that the project complies or exceeds all required specific use standards as well as UDC dimensional standards, except for one, which is a requirement for parking lot landscaping. Parking lot landscaping requires at least 5 feet of landscaping along vehicle use areas, which does include drive aisles, which would be along the east boundary, where there is no landscaping shown between the sidewalk and the proposed play areas. The applicant is proposing the required 5-foot sidewalk, but no landscaping as noted. Instead, the applicant is proposing multiple bollards behind the sidewalk for added safety for the proposed play areas, which staff definitely appreciates. Bollards should help increase the safety, and staff finds that a full 5 feet of landscaping may not be necessary, but some landscaping should be provided to increase the buffer between the drive aisle and the play areas. After discussing this with the applicant, staff has included a condition of approval to provide this landscaping or request alternative compliance to reduce that buffer area and include dense and decorative landscaping elements between the sidewalk and the play area. So again, could be 5 feet, could be 3, 2.5. That could be done through an administrative process after this conditional use permit. Staff just wants to increase that buffer between. Specific to the site, shared drive aisles are located along the west, north, and east property boundaries. Those are existing. All of these around the edge here are existing. There's an existing cross-access easement on each of the drive aisles and throughout this commercial subdivision, as well as for the recently approved short plat. Because there is no direct lot access to public roadways, and each roadway is constructed to its full anticipated widths, which would be Chinden to the north and Linder to the east, ACHD did not require any kind of traffic impact study nor any road improvements with this application. The proposed daycare building is shown as approximately 10,000 square feet, requiring a minimum of 20 parking spaces per code for residential use, for non-residential use, which is 1 space per 500 square feet. The applicant is proposing 46 parking spaces, which is more than twice the minimum. The submitted site plan shows a new 2-way 25-foot wide drive aisle along the north side of the building with 2 rows of parking, as well as parking on the west side of the building. Site plan does not show any dedicated pickup or drop-off location, which is intentional by the applicant, because through the narrative, the applicant does describe that this their policy for the actual operation of the daycare is for parents to park to drop off and pick up their kids. They don't just toss them out the door as they go, you know. Staff finds that the excess parking and the proposed operation for the parking and the child pickup and drop off is sufficient. As of 1:30 p.m. today, I should have looked again later, but I presume it's the same. There was no written testimony for this request. And with that, staff did recommend approval because it complies with code minus the parking lot landscaping, and there's an avenue to correct that. So staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Applicant would like to come up and. Good evening, sir. Need your name and address for the record. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, good evening. My name is Ethan Mansfield with Hawkins Companies, and we are the developers on this project. Our address is 855 West Broad Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I'll let Joe pull up my very brief report or my very brief presentation. We're seeking a conditional use permit tonight for a child care center on 1 acre of land located in the northwest corner of Chinnen Boulevard and Linder Road in a, that's southwest corner of Chinnen Boulevard and Linder Road in a service commercial zone. Joe did a great job outlining the project, the conditions, and his recommendation of approval. I won't add much to say, except to say that we agree with the terms and conditions outlined in the staff report. We're going to go ahead and work with staff through alternative compliance to address the landscaping. We are certainly amenable to providing some landscaping along that part of the site. We'll continue to work with staff and to ensure that our zoning certificate, our design review application, and alternative compliance application comply with the UDC, the architectural standards, and all other applicable ordinances. Again, I'd really like to thank Joe for his time on this application and his time at the city as a whole. He's been a great planner. It's been really nice to work with him. And I'd like to thank you for considering this item tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Mr. Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just because I had the experience very close by in Kids Choice down the road, I ask, do you have outdoor space, sufficient outdoor space for these kids to play in? I see the 10,000 square foot building and the parking, and just if you could clarify. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, we do have about 5,000 square feet of outdoor space. So half the area of our building is outdoor space. So yeah, 5 out of 15,000 square feet will be outdoors. There will be an infant playground and an playground for the older children, split roughly equally.
And I see that's on the east side of the building, which is smart.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
Ethan, what is a bollard?
A bollard I have not looked up the definition recently, but in this case, it will be a like vertical kind of vehicle deterrent that essentially, if anything were to hit that, it would stop whatever is hitting it. We have it detailed in our landscape plan, which I believe is included in the materials submitted. I don't have it printed tonight, but okay, we don't have it available, but I would be more than happy to provide that a cross section of the bollard if that's of interest. Essentially, the bollards in this case, about 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall, designed to stop any vehicular momentum from affecting the fence that surrounds the play area.
Like a Jersey barrier, like a big concrete barrier?
No. These are decorative bollards. They're typically used when, well,
Mr. Chair,
Go right ahead, Joe.
like they usually have them at banks, the big concrete poles that are sticking out of the ground to protect tellers, anything like that. About 3 to 4 feet high, usually they're made out of concrete or they're metal with a plastic thing over the top to make them look prettier. But it's just, yeah, they're definitely meant to stop vehicles from running over anything that is behind them. And you can kind of see it. There's quite a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11 or 12 along the east boundary, spaced in such a way that a car can't fit between them either, which would be the point of keeping vehicles from getting anywhere near the play area.
Okay, so you're also proposing these, am I saying it right, bollard?
Yes, ma'am.
A bollard and landscaping, is that correct? Or is it one or the other?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lorcher, we originally proposed the bollards and staff asked us to include some landscaping, which we agreed to do in addition to the bollards.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll go out on a limb here. And Joe, this might be a question for you, but and the reason I ask that is because my son used to go to school at Compass. So we've been through here a lot and people zip up and down this street where the bollards are going to be at. So is it possible to shift the building over and put the parking on the other side, or is that a non-start? Well, I mean, just from a code perspective, is that something that would even be allowed? Because I mean, it looks like the parking on the other side is accessed directly from the street, where that would not be possible on the other side if they were to put that on the east side, correct?
Mr. Chair, code wise, there's nothing that would prohibit the site for this area being flipped, basically.
Okay.
I don't necessarily see a physical issue with that, except that the drive aisle on the east side is probably more used, and we don't typically like backup parking into those more frequented drive aisles because you can create a lot of vehicular conflicts there. I would presume that was it Mr. Wiley, who owns the overall subdivision, would not like that at all. I think that would probably be the biggest hurdle, which is The drive aisle on the west is a lot less used because it's closer to this area would basically be adjacent to a portion of the parking for Dollar General. And I think even the southwest corner of it is actually just adjacent to the building, really. So yeah. So should be less frequented. I see your point, though. I do get that. I'm sure the applicant does as well, but because that east side one is used so much more, I do have questions and qualms with that backup parking there. I just feel like it's going to create a lot of issues.
Yeah, and I understand that as well. So just, I mean, my concern is just having kids in there. I understand the bollards. And that should mitigate that, but should and does are two different words. So, that's about the only concern I have with it at this point, is just how to better protect that side of it. I mean, obviously you're putting bollards in there, so there is a concern. So just anything we can do to kind of mitigate that further would be good, but I don't know what if any choices there are to do that. Yeah, not sure.
I'm not sure either, Mr. Chair. The only thing that could come to mind is just putting the play area adjacent to the parking spaces and pull the building to the east. But frankly, I've jumped a curb in a car before. And if there were bollards on the other side, I probably would have landed on top of them rather than hit them.
Right.
Granted, I was in a 58 bug, so they're not very heavy, but still. I feel like the same concern would probably exist. It's just unfortunate with just the size of the site, and you got so many drive aisles. I don't think it's avoidable, honestly. The bollards is great. I had not thought of that. I'm glad that the applicant and their team did. I think, again, at least a couple feet of landscaping will make that even safer. I think that that's going to be much preferred.
Yes, go ahead.
And where I was going with indicating that I thought it was smart was that obviously that afternoon sun presents the better place for the playground. It'd be awful with the kids playing in the direct west side.
Taking the kids in the sunshine. Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have, I'm sure we don't have anybody signed up to testify.
There's no one signed up.
Sir, would you like to testify at all? You sure? All right. Does the applicant have anything else to add?
I think I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, can I get a motion to close the public testimony portion of file number H 2022-0070?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0070. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Public hearing is closed. Okay, and with that, I will take any discussion, a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lorcher, go right ahead.
we need daycare, so, and this is seems like a good location because it's Linder and Chinden, right?
Mhm.
So there's lots of families around there, so.
Yep, and it's a good artery for people to drop people off on their way to work. So I'd be ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Feel free. Feel free.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2022-0070 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of November 17th, 2022, with no modifications.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2022-0070 with no modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, so motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before, because I know your colleagues are quick to make a motion to adjourn. Can I take care of a little housekeeping for like 60 seconds?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Parsons asked me, he had to step away this evening, but you may recall, commissioners, we made a commitment to provide some training to the commission periodically from time to time as the calendar allowed. So I think that Mr. Parsons and our planning manager, Caleb Hood, and now I may collaborate as well, but we're looking to provide some training to the commission at your December 15th meeting. So if you want to just sort of kind of make a note of that, we'll follow up in writing. If that's a problem for a majority of the council, or for the majority of the commissioners, we can look for an alternate date, but right now we're thinking December 15th. And in terms of topics, we spoke a little bit with the Chairman Seal earlier this evening, and we're thinking about when each of you became a commissioner, we provided some one-on-one training, somewhere like 90 minutes to 2 hours worth of training. And we're thinking about doing kind of a summary of that, or a condensed version of that, kind of a refresher course, so to speak, and kind of just sort of, now that you've had some time in the seat and you've had some experience doing what you're doing, to kind of go back over that might be more meaningful to you now that you've actually had some time to make decisions. So I just want to mention those two things for you, that we're looking at December 15th. We may start like at 5:15 before the usual 6 p.m. Starting time. And then we'll try to, keep to a condensed schedule. So we'll likely survey the group, maybe ask the city clerk's office to survey the group to confirm attendance, that we have enough commissioners that can attend. And then if individual commissioners have any particular topics or issues that you would like us to address, feel free to drop a note or email or phone call to Bill Parsons, and we'd be happy to try to accommodate that as well. Thank you for letting me do that, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I was hoping he was going to do a 60-second training.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
before we adjourn, I just wanted to say thank you all for your time, and I mean, professionally, thank you for making the commitment to be a volunteer for this, and I appreciate working with all of you and those that are not here tonight. Again, on to my next adventure, but I'm sure I will be in front of you again in my next role. So
We wish you the best for sure. And it has been a pleasure to work with you. And I look forward to giving you a bad time when you are in chambers. So
yes.
we've already been told that anything submitted by your firm will be heard last
Oh, that's
forever.
my wife will love that song.
Good luck.
Thank you very much,
Thank you all.
Joe.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorch, go right ahead.
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
We are adjourned. Thank you.